everyone, and welcome to Real Property Pros and Cons episode 20. This means that we've almost gotten through half a year of episodes, which means that I have gotten at least 20 people to come and talk to me on a show. And it also means that we've been doing this for 5 months. So that's really kind of cool and super exciting. So, yay. At some point, I'm going to actually learn how to use this platform, and I'll put in cool sound effects, and I don't know, chings and fireworks or something, and that'll be cool. I guess that'll be for the next 20 episodes. Anyways, as some of you may or may not know, I recently moved, and as I was moving, I had initially thought, okay, we're going to get movers and everything is going to be great. And that really didn't work out that way. And what I also realized is even if you hire movers, you are still going to have to move your stuff somehow because they're not going to be taking all of your stuff away from where it is. And also, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have stuff that they don't want movers touching. Like, I don't know, your priceless thing that you're going to murder somebody if they break it or scratch it, that's something that you're not going to have movers move. And so I thought, I'm really kind of curious, are there safe ways of moving? Are there safe ways that I can move all of my stuff so that I don't injure myself? And I didn't injure myself, but I also was kind of like, it would be really great to, well, two things. Well, it'd be really great to have somebody here who can talk to us about, how to move stuff and personal training and stuff like that. And on top of that, I found a guest who gets to talk to us about getting a new commercial space, which is really in line with what this show is about. Commercial spaces, what are you supposed to do with them? How do you deal with them? And at the very end, provided that you stick around, you'll get a really nice reward of how do you lift things without injuring your back, because that is one of the most common problems. People lift things and then they, blow out their back and they're kind of done for several weeks after having moved, which means they're not able to enjoy the lovely new place that they're living in. So that's who we have with us today. That's what we're going to talk about. And we will be right back after this brief interlude. All right, I am here today with Derek Philly, who really enjoys the bump in music. And on top of that, so Derek is an exercise physiologist. He received a degree, summa cum laude, from the Ohio State University in exercise physiology, I believe. And he has done a lot of different work related to exercise physiology. He currently is volunteering at the Peru School in La Jolla, which is a school that tries to get children or people who have not yet gone to college or who have families who haven't gone to college, gets them to college. And I think that's a really amazing and awesome place to volunteer. And he volunteers and coaches lacrosse there. And he has now decided to focus his business on helping the 55 and up community stay fit and maintain mobility throughout their lives, which generally can be very long after you get to be 55. And the body does not necessarily like those years after the 55 age. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about how he put together his new gym and probably a whole bunch of other stuff that'll show up whatever throughout our presentation. And just like last week, we are also going to have some live on-site clips because I got positive feedback from that. And not only did I get positive feedback from people who watched it, I also got positive feedback from myself because that makes this show so much more fun. All righty. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Derek.
Thank you, Frantz. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I gotta say, you're really so just as an aside, we met during the pandemic. I did not know anything about you. I kind of knew that you had this face and it was on a screen and it was in a box, but I never saw you like in relation to other things. So I didn't know how tall you were, which is just.
Well, I mean, I guess I could say the same for you because I mean, Frantz came over to the gym, 2 days ago, Tuesday, and we got to meet in person for the first time. And I think I could say the same about you. You're much taller, bigger frame in person than I was expecting. So
that is interesting. That is interesting. Yes. And then I think the same happened for me. Like there is this one guy that I know who is even taller than you are. I think he's like maybe 6'4" or 6'5". And he was always like sitting down in a box. And I was like, wow, yeah, I can't look you in the eyes because you're so much taller than I am.
The unexpected things of virtual networking that people don't think about as it translates back into the real world.
Yes, I think that like maybe people should start a trend of just like putting their name and then putting their height next to it.
Yeah, I should have put that in my little blue box. Derek Philly, 6'3" on a good day, 6'1" on a bad day.
Exactly. And then you could just like do that, and then there would be like no height shock when you meet somebody in person.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, plane rides are never fun. I'll tell you that at this height.
It's true. I have learned. I'm like starting to learn to appreciate, being like more or less average height. I'm just kind of like I can do rides without any stress. Like my joints and bones are cooperating, and I'm not like, oh God, I'm so. Yeah. Anyways, it's great. I've never hit my head against like a door frame.
Average height people. You gotta be used to them.
It's true. Well, yes.
I have to say, comment based on what you just said. You showed me some pretty amazing moves the other day, like mobility. You're getting into your squat was pretty impressive, and I have to think some of the things that you've told me about that you keep up with, like dancing, ballroom dancing. I think that's a really, really good thing for just helping to maintain those types of things, just moving well and not feeling like your joints feel like crap.
Exactly.
Anybody I've ever talked to or worked with who does something like rhythmic with their body on a regular basis, man, they do good. They don't really seem to have very many problems. So keep doing that.
That is amazing. Yeah, that's awesome. All right. So I think this goes into a really nice segue into our, first conversation, which is just being a new commercial tenant, right? So you just started your new gym.
Yeah, it's really an awesome opportunity, really great experience. I mean, a lot of emotions like that happen in that process. Really, really exciting to have the opportunity. And then you kind of just get slapped in the face with like, oh, like this is a lot of work. And there's a lot of things about this that I wasn't necessarily anticipating. And so I'm kind of in the middle phases right now of going through a lot of that stuff, the side work that needs to go into it on top of just, running the business itself. And so I know we have some clips on a certain few things, but just if you don't mind, just briefly, I'll tell you about kind of how this all transpired and like what I was doing and how I got to have this opportunity too. I mean, I don't know if you knew about this kind of phase of my business or training, but for about a year and a half, I was just training out of a van, like at the park. So I had a bunch of equipment loaded up into this 1999 Chrysler Town and Country. And I would just roll up to the park, regurgitate all this stuff onto the park space for however many hours I was going to be there, work with people. And I was actually going pretty good, pretty picked up, got a lot of really good interest just from people who saw what I was doing, which was really cool. And then a friend of mine who owns the gym that you went to and came in to check out the other day, he approached me and he was like, blah, blah, blah. Like my wife and I are considering, more or less trying to move out of state, and I'm going to try to just sell the gym. And so he pretty much asked me like, hey, do you just want to buy the gym? And I was like, yeah, we talked about price and everything like that. And I was like, oh my God, like, yes, because I mean, not a lot of people at my age, I'm about to be 27, like get an opportunity to take over running a commercial space like that. this soon in their career. So it's really, really a blessing to have something like that happen. And so the 6 months or so, he was there with me, and I was just working with my people. He was working with his people, and we were kind of splitting the cost of the facility and everything. And then just recently, within the last couple of weeks, he has moved to Washington, and the place is now like 100% mine to like operate. And so it's been a lot of learning with how to manage all this stuff and successfully transfer clients and things over to there with having a relocation and everything. There's been a lot going on. And so, yeah, that's kind of just like a quick brief overview of like the transition itself and kind of what I was doing and what I'm doing now and kind of taking over. So thanks for letting me kind of give a little background there. Oh, Frantz, are you muted?
Yes, I am. You know what? That has not happened for 2 shows, and then it happened today. So whatever.
I just see your lips moving. I was like, "What?"
What I was going to say is everything that you talked about in terms of mobility. This clip really helps us understand why mobility is important when you're a business owner. I just had this fun clip, and we'll find out why as I play it. And I think you know what it is, but
I think I know what this
clip. Yep.
Let's check it out. Space leasing is a tenant. Roof access. To access, in this case, the AC unit. Super fun. It's also really helpful to be a tall person in this process.
Yeah, so that was super fun watching you. I will say I didn't climb up that ladder. But yeah, I think the one question that I have for you is did you think that if you owned a gym or owned a commercial space, you would actually be using your personal training experience or expertise to manage the space?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, yeah, the stuff that I do is meant to carry over into more or less every aspect of somebody's life. Simple things as walking or climbing stairs versus having to move things around that require effort against an object. And so absolutely. I mean, whether it's equipment itself that I have in the gym that I have to move around and set up, or it's moving boxes when I'm just moving from one apartment to another, that stuff all is meant to transfer over. So absolutely, man. Absolutely.
That's helpful. So what I'm hearing from what you're saying is that personal training is not just for people who want to be super hot and have an OnlyFans page. It's also for people who just want to be able to function in the world.
Oh, that's exactly right. And you had mentioned having a bit more of an emphasis on the 55 and up community, and that's really what I love working with is people who don't necessarily care about what they're seeing in the mirror, which obviously can be a great side effect of all this training and stuff, but it's just being able to do things that you still want to be able to do for yourself. And so we're talking somebody getting into their 60s or 70s and they just still want to be able to get from point A to point B using their own legs, climb upstairs, pick stuff up off the ground if they need to, play with their grandkids and not hurt themselves. There's a lot of reward in getting to work with people who have that as a goal, because I think that just has a lot more meaning to somebody, and emotional attachment to why they're doing this stuff than just the the aesthetic aspect of it. And that's what I fell in love with training. And so that's kind of where I've taken things. So yeah.
I think that, and I think that's really important and valuable. And, I think what people can do, I mean, we're both relatively young. I mean, you're a little bit younger than I am, but, the ability to kind of just move around and do stuff, I think is something that a lot of people take for granted. And then afterwards, the less you use your ability to move around and do stuff, the less you will be able to move around and do stuff moving forward.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's really helpful to just realize that you should be moving around and doing stuff as you are living and operating in the world. And as you get older, the more stuff you move around and do, the more you're going to be able to do as you get older.
Exactly. Absolutely. Well said.
Yes. And I'm not even the personal trainer.
Not too bad, man. Not too bad. It's use it or lose it. Like you're not, you don't use those joints. You don't use your muscle a little bit. It's a lot of energy to maintain that stuff. Your body's not going to keep dedicating precious resources to it if you're not using it, right? It's a costly thing to maintain. And so absolutely well said.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful. So, I mean, but when you moved into your commercial space, maybe you thought you'd be using your personal training experience, but did you think you would be like fixing an AC or figuring out how to fix an AC or going onto the roof at all to fix the AC or?
No, probably not. That's the thing. And we'll talk probably more about this in some of the other topics as well, but that's the thing with like a commercial lease that I don't think a lot of people understand initially versus like a residential like living space that you'd be leasing for. Within like a living space, a lot of the appliances and things that are involved in leasing that space are the landlord's responsibility. So if something breaks, okay, let's just call the landlord or submit a request and like somebody's going to come and fix that for you. In most commercial leases, unfortunately, that's actually the like exact opposite. So for my lease, for example, pretty much anything within the confines of the unit that I have, whether that's like the plumbing, the AC units, anything that's on the walls, anything really pretty much inside the space besides a couple of select things, like the AC unit technically is on the roof, but it supplies the interior. I'm responsible for fixing that stuff if anything goes wrong. And so that was one of the things that initially I was like, oh, this doesn't necessarily seem like right or fair. And then I started talking to other people who've dealt in this, in real estate or commercial leasing a lot more than I have. And they're like, no, that's actually a pretty like standard thing. And so that's one of those things where you're like, oh man, like you just kind of have to bite the bullet and be diligent, like maintaining a car, like be diligent about maintaining your stuff there too, because you're now kind of responsible for that. And there's not really much of a way around it. So no, I did not think that I would be having to climb up onto the roof myself. Actually, technically, I don't. I mean, I can just come pay somebody to do that, but I can get up there and like change out an air filter on my own. Not too hard of a task to do. And there's definitely a lot of like handy man qualities that would be really helpful to have if you are taking over a space like that and maybe need to fix things or do things on a bit more like a budget, especially early on. And so that's what I'm learning and going through right now. Super fun.
Yeah, exactly. Super fun. I think that's useful to know. And kind of tying this back again to personal training and fitness, you talked about a little bit about painting a wall. And I have like painted a wall once. I will never paint a wall again.
What kind of wall was this?
I mean, it was a wall in a house where I was living, and it's like, okay, I painted this wall, but I'm like, you know what? That is something that can belong to somebody else.
Somebody else. Somebody else could take that role next time.
TaskRabbit. Great.
Not a small project, man, having to paint anything. So
yes, and
yeah,
I think
do you want to run that clip?
Yes, I think that clip is going to be really helpful for us to understand. I didn't paint the wall in Derek's gym, but he talks about how labor intensive it is. And the other thing that I really want y'all to remember is like, any comment about like, oh, and we put several coats of paint on. Several coats of paint means that you paint it once, and then afterwards you wait like several hours, and then it dries. And then you paint it again. So this is not just like, okay, well, we did this once and then it was like, no, this took like probably a while.
Yes. I'll tell you exactly how long it took after we take a look at what was done.
Yes.
So, thinking about leasing a commercial space in Southern California, great. If you're getting a place that was built maybe in like the 1980s or 90s, there's a pretty good chance that you might have textured surface on the wall. And so this place has texture on every single wall in here. You can kind of see that. Now, when you're talking about having to maybe paint over top of an existing color, if there was a previous business there, which in this case there was this big blue and black stripe that just went all the way down the wall. And so, considering how to paint that, I had to think through like, if I want to get rid of that little texture there, which you can very faintly see now, I would have had to sand like pretty much the entire wall down, which would have changed the texture, so the textures on the walls wouldn't have matched anymore. Or you can do what I did, which was get a really thick primer, and you would prime over top of that bottom layer, that colored coat first. Let that dry for like a good 5 or 6 hours, and then get yourself like a really thick paint that sticks nicely, and you can just do a few layers of the entire wall. So we did one full layer over the whole wall, and then we went about halfway up from the line and halfway down. After that dried, then we pretty much just did like a final base layer over top of the line, and we can't really see any color coming through anymore, but we sacrifice maybe a clean finish because you can still see a little bit of the stripe coming through. But cut your losses and take what you can.
Yeah. So I'm here. So how long did that take?
A couple days. So I dedicated essentially more or less like a day and a half to it. There was a lot of prep work that went into everything. So the gym is a little bit differently arranged now than prior to painting that. And so not a huge deal, but I had to essentially move all the stuff first. So there, you kind of saw in that video, like there's a squat rack in there, there's a cable machine, there's dumbbell racks with lots of weight on them. And so just having to move all of that stuff first was like pretty intensive, which probably took me a good like hour just to get everything kind of moved out of the way. And then have to take off all of the light, like any kind of like outlet fixtures. There was a thermostat like control module on the wall, so I had to remove all of that stuff. Tape essentially the floor molding, tape across the ceiling as well, so I didn't get any paint on the ceiling, and then into the corners of the wall space. And then in that same night, I also did the primer layer over top of the original stripe, and I had to fill in like some holes that were in the wall as well, like where some equipment was attached. And so in total time, I think that first day, that all took me about 6 hours. And then, I kind of said like, all right, this is good. I'm gonna let the paint or the primer dry. And then we went back the next day to do, actually, here's a nice little tip as well with the paints. Don't skimp out on the paint, especially if you're trying to make like a commercial space look nicer, because we found out I paid like a decent amount for the 2 gallons of white paint that I got, and significantly reduced the amount of time that I had to put into this, because the 2.5 layers or whatever you heard me talk about, how we went over that full wall, then half, then just the line. It went way, way faster with a nice thick paint that laid on kind of thicker. We probably would have had to do like 4 layers just to cover that line if we hadn't gone with like a nicer quality paint. And just paid extra like $20 per gallon, but it was totally worth it. But the second day, time-wise, to paint everything, we let the first layer dry for a good like 4 hours. It really didn't take too long to lay down the first layer. We had 4 people total helping, including myself, so that was great. But it maybe took us like an hour to lay down that first layer, which really wasn't too bad. That wall is 53 feet long and about 9 feet tall. So pretty decent sized wall. But we got it down really fast. We were like, wow, this was actually pretty quick. We were happy about that. We let it dry for a few hours, had to run a few other errands, came back. And then it was just my wife and I who did the second couple layers. And that probably took us to do those other 2 layers, another like hour and a half. And then of course had to move everything back too. So it was a large project. It was a whole weekend after working like all week. So I was like, man, this is just this is exhausting. And we're also getting ready to do another paint job probably this weekend, where we're going to put some colors and some designs on that wall that we initially painted too. So like mentally gearing up for another big process, but hopefully it won't be too bad. Hopefully it'll be pretty fast.
Yeah, hopefully if you're like putting on like designs or, you know, stickies or pasties or whatever, it might actually like take less time.
It's going to be paint.
Okay. Well, if
gonna
it's
be
paint, you're gonna have to, and with different designs, you don't want it to bleed. So yeah, it might take a little bit.
Yeah,
But
we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Wish me luck.
yeah, definitely a lot of luck. And I think two things that I took out from what you said is, one, as a business owner, having friends is a good thing. So you
Oh,
want to
yeah.
have friends, and you want to have friends who are willing to help you with your business, because otherwise you're going to be all alone, and your business probably won't be able to. Either you need to be really rich, or you need to have friends.
Yes, one of the two. Make sure you're making good connections with people, like genuine. The other thing too is I tried my best to make it to where, like, when my friends who are also actually clients of mine, I've worked with them for a long time, and they were just like, yeah, let's do this. We want to help you. And I was like, okay, cool. I was like, but I want to make sure that when they show up, they're getting to do like the fun part, which is actually doing the painting. And so that's why I spent, like 6 hours the night prior just getting everything ready. It would have been a drag if they showed up and like, okay, we got to move all this stuff first. Okay, we got to do all this other prep work first. And by the time we got all that stuff done, they probably would have been like, yeah, we got to go. Like, we don't want to help with the painting anymore. So keep that in mind. Like, if you're going to have somebody, especially with like a paint job, do all that prep stuff, that annoying and kind of boring stuff. And, it really made doing the painting with them a lot of fun. We had a really good time. We had fun music going on. It was cool. So, put the time in on the prep work, which is, the tedious stuff, but the painting itself is actually kind of cool. So get some people involved with that, and it turns it into something a little bit more enjoyable than just this, this task that you have to get done and check off the list,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so friends, make sure your clients can be your friends. That is really awesome. And I wonder if my sound quality has changed, because I think I changed the mic somehow, but we will
You still
see.
sound okay on my end, but at the very
Well, that's
least.
great. That's great.
Good.
You know what? This is the reality of doing stuff live and not having a sound person. Is this not like my
Troubleshooting issues live.
live? Which we don't have any clips to talk about that, but like, to what extent do you actually troubleshoot issues as a business owner, like in your building, or just real time?
Well, I don't have a ton of experience with too many issues yet. I'm seeing if I can't think of like an example. So, okay, so this is kind of a dumb example, but it's better than nothing. So, my gym storefront faces west, right? So in the evening hours, there's a ton of light that comes into the place. And think about it from my perspective, or if we were exercising and you're sweaty and you're hot, and then all of a sudden, like, the sun just comes full blast into the building, like at like 6 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock. So what my old business partner and I did, we initially had bought like these cubbies, and we were going to arrange them in a certain way, and we had set them up in one spot that was in front of the window, and we were like training people in there in the evening, and we're like, wait a second, like, why does it feel so much better in here at like 6 than it usually does? And we realized, like, oh, this is just like essentially just blocking a bunch of the light coming in. And so, you may not necessarily think of stuff like that initially, but I mean, I'm just gonna buy like some pull down shades now, and then it's just as soon as we get into the evening hours, block that sun, because it really makes a big difference for the experience of the person there. Like I said, probably not the most fun example in the world, but it is a real thing that did happen, and it was kind of funny how we noticed, like, oh wow, even just like putting these little cubbies there made a really, really big difference. Those types of little things can really improve like the customer experience there. So that's kind of a cool little learning opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. and just thinking about your customer, thinking about ways of solving problems for them proactively, I think is one of the things that makes you a successful business owner. Not like you generally, but like you personally, since I worked with you. Knowing that you can be proactive in thinking about what will make a good experience for your customers really does make you a better business owner, and it also, quite frankly, avoids problems in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely.
Because then you don't have people who are unhappy with a specific problem. And I think that also brings us to kind of another clip in terms of problem solving, is like ways of preventing problems ahead of time. So we'll just watch this, and I'm sure you know what we're talking about, but we'll watch this clip, and afterwards we can talk about it.
Okay, so renting a commercial space, security measures. So most places, whether you're doing a storefront where you're selling things or you're providing a service, are going to want to have some level of surveillance happening, video footage. There's a high potential that somebody might eventually want to get you into a lawsuit situation accused of doing something that maybe you didn't do. So what I did, and I'm a personal trainer, FYI, just in case we don't know that at this point. What I did was got a Nest Cam, super affordable. This one actually was existing from the old trainer who worked here, and so I think he paid, I don't know, maybe like 70 or 80 bucks for the camera itself. Super easy to set up. It connects to your Wi-Fi. You just have to plug it into a wall, sync it to the Wi-Fi, download an app, and then I think it's like $60 a year for like Nest Cam Aware is what the software is, and you're able to save like 5 days worth of backed up data. So if anybody were to ever accuse you of anything, you at least have a way of pulling up some footage to prove that you are not a bad person. So I'd definitely invest in that if you're thinking about having a commercial space.
Awesome. Yes. And I mean, you seem super nice, and I've known you for a while, and I know that you're a good person, but sometimes people don't know that, right?
Yeah, well, sometimes people don't know that, and sometimes people are, just trying to get easy money too. Like that happens in the world, especially in like personal training industry. There's a lot of lawsuits for like malpractice as it relates to instruction. A lot of people might try to sue somebody for like sexual misconduct, for instance, and so having something like that's super important. I do have like a small story I can share where this did really come in handy. So it's nothing like bad, but it was a client of mine. She's an older woman, and she had misplaced her phone. And so this was like an older iPhone, and like the Find Your iPhone app was telling her that it was at the gym, right? And so this is when my business partner was still there, and he had access to the footage. And so we were looking around for the phone. I was like, I don't really see it anywhere. And this client just kind of kept insisting on like, well, it has to be there because it's saying that it's there, And we were like, oh, geez, like this is a headache, So he pulls up the footage, and he was able to go back a couple of days when she was there, and he has a clear cut like shot in that footage of me. Actually, she almost walked out without her phone, and I grabbed it and I handed it to her, and you could see me handing it to her, and she's like, oh, like thanks, and she leaves. And so she did come in, and she was looking for the phone, and we were able to like kind of show her that footage as well, like, well, hey, here's what we have, and this is what happened. And so it kind of got us out of this potentially annoying situation where somebody might continue to accuse us that we misplaced it, or we had it and we definitely did not have it. We had no idea where it was. And then the funny thing is, it just ended up being it was like in her car door in the console, like the side like storage console. And she ended up finding that shortly after. So I was like, oh my gosh, like, but it just comes to show like you don't know what kind of situations you might end up in. And just having something like that is only going to be helpful. Another little side thing I can say is, I could pull up right now, like the video feed off of that thing on my phone. And let's say I'm just like, it's like 9 o'clock at night. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, did I remember to move this thing to a certain spot, or did I remember to turn the lights off? Or I'm just like, I just want to check in and see how things are and, make sure everything's good. You can do that. And it's really good for just peace of mind as well, to be able to just check in remotely.
That is definitely true, especially if you like become a super successful personal trainer and then you're not actually going to be at your gym.
Right.
Then you can check in, and it's also really helpful, not just to prove that you are not a bad person, but it's also sometimes to prove that other people are bad people, right? So like, if your other personal trainer did something that they shouldn't have done, then you have footage and you can be like, look, this is what you did and you're supposed to do that, and now you can talk about it. Or somebody breaks
exactly.
in,
Right.
you can see who broke in or whatever.
Yeah,
Because it's real
everything, man.
time.
Like liability related to clients. If you have employees, there could be disputes there. And then possibly if you ever get into a situation where you need to, have file an insurance claim, like huge, they can't really dispute like live footage or recorded footage. If you're saying somebody came in and like stole XYZ things, like being able to show them that is pretty much a guarantee that they're not going to try to work you out of that, what you're entitled to with that claim. So super worth it for what, like initial, maybe $120 somewhere around there for an initial investment, and then just a maintenance fee for the recorded footage. Absolutely a must have.
Yeah, and also compared to what it costs to run a business generally, that's nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Definitely not wrong.
$200 a year if you can't. And it always, as an attorney, it always amazes me what people are just like not willing to spend money on. It's like, okay, so you'll spend the extra money on like the fancy like ding for your doorbell, but you won't spend the extra money to have somebody review your lease, or you won't spend the extra money to have a security system. And it's like, okay, well, why are you taking on this risk?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no. I had actually, again, client of mine, just cool that I just get to work with a lot of different people, and it's fun to get to learn about what other people do in that process too. So I have friends and clients who they deal a lot with like renting and leasing and stuff. So when I was getting ready to take that place over, they're like, yeah, like send over your lease. I'll take a look at it and, let you know if there's anything in there that seems different than what we would normally see or like shady. So they were kind enough to take a look at that and told me like, yeah, this looks pretty standard. Everything looks, pretty good here. So shouldn't be any issues, which was great. But if I didn't have that, I definitely would have paid a lawyer to look over that for me, just for the peace of mind.
Exactly. And it's not, and I mean, I've said this on other shows with other guests, it's not just peace of mind. It's not just like the lawyer tells you this and you feel good about it. It's that if the lawyer tells you this and they're wrong, it's not really your problem. It's the lawyer's problem.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. Definitely.
Um, so, I'm looking at the time, and I'm not sure how to like segue nicely into this. This is just a little fun when you look at sort of leases. One of the things that I certainly advise clients to do is like look at what's included in the lease when you're getting the lease. So is the landlord going to, for example, pay for signage? In some leases, the landlord will actually pay for signage. In other circumstances, the landlord will not pay for signage. And sometimes, the landlord will say the signage is, if you have it, you got to leave it. In other cases, the landlord will say, if you got it, you have to take it. And so these are things that you can think about. But we looked at the former signs in your building, and we just kind of did a little bit of fun, like vinyl peel away, just to see what that looks like, which I'll just play because it's cool. And then we will chat about proper form when lifting, which I think is anybody who's stuck around this long, I feel is why they've stuck around that long. So we should reward them for their dedication. All right. Well, we'll play the removing vinyl clip just because it's cool and fun.
Sure.
Leasing a commercial space, fun activity number 3, I think, at this point. So when you take over a business, you may have an existing overhead plexiglass sign. So this was originally hanging from the old business above the entrance to the building, and it's a backlit one, so it is translucent. And from what I've been told, these are rather expensive. I can't give you an actual figure. I didn't look into it, but my neighbor was like, yeah, don't break that thing. Don't snap it in half on accident when you're taking it down. And so what I'm going to do is just reuse the existing plexiglass, and you're going to have to remove like the vinyl decal lettering on here. So grab yourself goof off. You'll put it on a rag, wipe over top of the logo or decal you're trying to remove, let it sit there for a few seconds, and then we just got up and under it with a little bit of a razor blade just to get a lip up. And once that lip was free, you're able to pretty easily peel this away from the plexiglass without ruining its finish. And so we would take this all the way down the whole sign and then essentially clean the sign, and then you can apply your new decals.
Awesome. Well, that was fun. It was cool. And I feel like you're just kind of like I don't know if you remember this show, but like there's this show on PBS called This Old House, and there's this guy who is like, oh, look at this house, and here's the furnace, and you can take out the furnace, and you can like do these things. And I just kind of was reminded of that watching you talk about the.
Oh man, I'm gonna credit my dad for all of that. Any of the know-how stuff with like tools or do this, do that, don't do this. A lot of that stuff I just learned from him. He owns an auto body shop, and so fortunate to have a little bit of like handyman experience and just comfort working with like tools and harsh chemicals, and or maybe just stupid enough to subject myself to harsh chemicals. I don't know. But yeah, he really helped out a lot with that growing up. But yeah, the signage, man, that's been a lot longer of a process to get everything kind of ordered and designed and everything. But that's another great example of one of those things where it's like definitely just when it comes to the designs of everything, get a professional to do that, because that's something that's representing, you know, that cover of a book, first impression kind of thing, that they first see your business, and that's what they're going to see like a lot of the time right off the get. So make sure that somebody who knows what they're doing with how things look, make sure it looks good, make sure the branding is nice. So I'm having somebody else help me with a lot of the design and actually like acquiring like the decals and everything too. And then there's also the nice component, like there is peace of mind built into that as well, because let's say something goes wrong with like the prints, you know, the decal's just like messed up in some way, like he's going to be able to handle that. He can take care of it. And that's just such a headache to have to try to get in touch with somebody and return all that stuff and either get refunded or get it remade. So it's nice to just have somebody else handling that. And then he's going to help like with the install of everything too. So that's definitely one of those things where it's like, just invest in somebody doing that for you, if not just for the not having to do the work yourself, because it's intensive to try to put decals on like glass and make sure that they look the right way and they're not crooked, there's not bubbles in there. It's really a long process. So yes. I'm really glad I'm having somebody just do that for me. And then the designs are going to look like really, really good too. That's one thing I can say about the previous owner is I think he did a lot of the design stuff on his own. And originally I was going to like just kind of copy what he had done. And then I contacted my buddy who does design. And I was like, hey, you know, do you want to take a look at this and do the design work for me? He's like, yeah, for sure. And man, he just came back and showed me these like really awesome designs. And I was like, man, this is so much nicer than what I would have done myself. And I'm just going to be so much happier with everything too. I mean, I'm going to be the one who's there every day. Like I'm going to be there more than anybody else. And it would really suck to like walk into a place where you look at it, you're just like, yeah, I mean, I did that myself and it's all right. Versus, oh, I show up and hey, man, that looks really freaking good. Like that's great. That's my spot, you know? So have some people help you with like that aesthetic stuff so that you really enjoy the space that you're in and spending a lot of time in, especially if you're like myself and you provide a service and you're going to be in that building a lot. It makes it a lot more enjoyable to be there on a day-to-day.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now we get to the final awesome thing in kind of our last 10 minutes where we're going to talk about lifting. So before we show the clip about lifting, like in 30 seconds, can you tell us why lifting is important? Why should we care?
Bone density, integrity of tissues, not hurting yourself, and feeling confident in what you can do with your body.
Awesome. That was 30 seconds. We're going to play the clip and then we'll talk about it.
You just got your commercial space leased and ready to go. Awesome. You got to move a bunch of crap into that place now, though. So one of the biggest things people come to me for with help a lot of the time is just moving things without their low back being destroyed or killing them like the next day or even day of. And so here's a really easy strategy you can practice prior to having to move anything that should hopefully help you move with your hips and avoid too much strain on the low back. So you'll just need a bench that's a little bit lower than knee height. And I want you to approach that bench so that the back of your low leg, your calf muscle, is in contact with it. And you can see I'm staying kind of soft in my knees. I want you just to practice leaning forward and sticking your butt back and letting your chest fall forward without increasing pressure into the back of this low leg. So if you start to try to lean back and you're like pushing this guy over and your hips are starting to drift back and your knees are starting to drift back, you're going to get onto your heels. You're going to start to really load your hamstrings a lot, and you're going to lose control of your hips. I want you to practice staying loaded in the hips. You can pick up a light object and then same thing, use those glutes and those hip muscles to pull the hips back forward without applying any pressure into the back of that object there. A few reps on that should help translate over into better usage of your glutes when you're moving something or bending and lifting so that we don't over leverage the low back and potentially hurt ourselves.
Awesome. Well, that was super helpful. And you had actually mentioned squatting or getting down into a squat. And generally speaking, from what I've heard, the best way to lift is to actually lift, like get down into a squat and then afterwards lift up.
Yeah.
And so
I would agree most of the time with that. But unfortunately, a lot of people really, really struggle just getting down into a squat without excessive like knee pain or even back pain in that case as well. So I kind of chose to show more of a hinging and picking up using your hips where you let the chest fall forward, because really a lot more people can get into a position like that more comfortably than they can kind of loading into their knees. So, I mean, if you have good control and you can get into a squat position and you're not gonna, feel safe and confident there, I would absolutely recommend like bend into the knees, keep your chest a little bit taller. But a lot of people are really struggle with that. And the biggest thing that I think I forgot to mention in that video is to not try to grab into the floor with your feet and to not shift all the way back onto your heels. If this is my foot right here, this is my heel, and these are my toes up in the front, I want a nice distribution of pressure right like in the middle, right where the arch is at, so that I can start to put pressure into that arch system. That's going to allow better distribution of tension upstream into the legs and into the hips, so that we're not going to over leverage like the back side of the legs or the front side of the legs too aggressively and just have a weird tension distribution across the whole lower body system. And then on top of that, picking stuff up from the ground, it's, your glutes are like the strongest thing you've got. Most people don't have very good control of their glutes in a squatted position. And so they're going to really stress their quads. And a lot of the time their low back still is going to be pretty sore after doing squat movements. So I think if we can just practice ways of getting the glutes to work a little bit better, they are one of the larger like muscle groups we have for the hips, then that's probably a better call for most people. And I've seen good carryover when I teach people that way versus trying to learn how to squat or bend into the knees.
Yeah. So you answered the question that I was implying, which is why did you advise picking up that way? Which is that a lot of people struggle to get into a squat, which I did not know. That was something that
unless you're Frantz, of course. Frantz really surprised me. He squatted down beautifully into a nice, comfortable resting squat right after I showed him that, and I was like, "You, my friend, would be somebody I would say just pick it up from a squat because you know how to do that really, really well, and you're not going to have any problems." So it does kind of come down a lot of the time in just training in general. It comes down to like the individual and what they're able to do and what their capacity for certain ranges of motion are and like strength at a base. So understanding yourself and what your stronger positions are is also helpful in just deciding, like, am I going to try to pick this up one way or am I going to try to pick this up a different way, given what I know about my own limitations. and then work on strengthening what's already pretty good and pretty strong as it is. Don't try to chase something that's not that comfortable or not that strong when you have other options that you're like, I feel way more confident, way more stable and strong here. Get good at what you're already pretty good at, and then there will be time for some of that other stuff later if you continue to work on training and work on conditioning stuff. So that's just a very quick piece of advice for anybody just in general training too.
Yeah, which I think is helpful. And there's also, I think that, especially with something like personal training, the years of non-use, like, I think a lot of people want things to happen overnight with personal training. And it's like, just think about how many years of neglect and non-use it took for you to get in the position that you're in now. Like, it might take not that much time for you to get out of that position, but it's going to take like some time.
Oh yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, the body's ability to adapt to stuff is amazing. I've worked with people who have had like multiple different knee surgeries, for example, and first started working with them, didn't have any confidence at all in their ability to like stand up from the ground or to be able to do like a light hopping movement. And just being able to build somebody's capacity back up to that, even after having like a traumatic surgery, like a knee replacement operation, it can be done. It just needs to be done nice and slow and steady. Like, slow and steady wins the race in training. I do a lot of programming. I mean, like, exercise programming like almost every day. And I'm constantly reminding myself of that, like looking at what we did last week with somebody, what might be a good thing to work on this week in relation to that. The answer most of the time is pretty much the same thing, but let's just challenge things for like 1 or 2 sets a little bit more than we did last time. So just very, very gradual increases in demand on what you're trying to improve. It does not need to be a fast process because, like Frantz said, it took a long, long time for you to get where you're at now into maybe like a deconditioned state or a state of physical capacity that you're not very happy with. It's probably going to take a little bit of time to get out of that as well. And if we're relating that back to the 55 and up group, who I prefer to work with, we're also dealing with somebody who's not necessarily in their physiological prime anymore either. So these adaptations at that point in life are going to take a little bit longer to take hold. And there may be a bit of a kind of a cap or threshold to what we're actually fully able to achieve. But that does not mean that we can't make noticeable improvements that still are very, very impactful on your life in a positive way. So just take your time with it, give it time, and it will work as long as you're not doing things too aggressive, too fast, and hurting yourself.
I think that's true. And I think the other encouraging thing is when you're looking at somebody who might be in their like 30s, early 30s, mid 30s, or whatever, like that is the time to kind of, when you are in your physiological prime, to actually like train yourself to be fully functional, because then you will be able to continue to be fully functional as you get to be, older. And I think that a lot of times people kind of think that, oh, okay, well, I'm young and so I can do this, but they don't actually train themselves to continue doing it.
No, definitely not. And that's the thing. I mean, it's a lot easier to be more active when you're younger. Your ability to recover from stuff is way better. I read an article not too long ago that was talking about looking at training from an Eastern medicine perspective, which was simple as just looking at it from like a yin and yang, right? And they were talking about yin being like really light intensity, light activation. This could be like meditating. This could be respiratory exercises. This could be a really low intensity, like leg activation movement. And how you have to really start to balance that stuff a lot better as you get older and older. When you're younger, you can handle a lot more yang, a lot more high intensity stuff, wear and tear on your body, and you can bounce back from that really pretty quickly. But as you age, the balancing of more intense things with lighter intensity things is a huge, huge thing that you need to be considering if you want to talk about like longevity and being able to continue doing things and continue training in a way that feels good, where you're seeing progress as well. And I know I'm only 27, about to be 27, but even getting closer to like my 30s, I'm already starting to notice that. I'm feeling that shift where it's like, yeah, like doing a few things that are really just more low intensity respiratory stuff, light activation for my hips and certain positions on the ground has been super, super helpful for the days where I'm going a little bit harder, a little bit more intense. I've noticed much better return, starting to focus more on that lighter intensity stuff. And then the days when I'm going hard, it's a lot better and it goes a lot smoother.
And there's a part of me that wonders, like, is that just kind of good for anybody in general, regardless of where they are in their...
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. Stress is stress. Like your body doesn't know the difference between work-related stress, physical stress, like exercising or moving stuff, relationship stress, like it all, the energy to manage that stress, it's all coming from the same bank. So just in general, like learning how to manage stress better is something everybody should be trying to do, man. Like,
Awesome. Well, Derek, I want to say that I really appreciate your being with us. I also want to say that if you want to look at the sort of more low intensity stuff that Derek was talking about, he did a really awesome show with me last year where he did a really nice meditative breathing exercise that you can see on some previous episode that is also on the same YouTube channel. And other than that, I want to thank Derek. Thank you so much for being with us. And I will be back next week with another real estate pro. Bye-bye.
thanks, Frantz.
Bye.